What is it about the taboo that tempts and lures in the need to dabble with darkness? And where do we see that more in the fantasy TTRPG scene than the magic of the dead, necromancy? A disclaimer to start at the front of this video is I fully understand that there are numerous disappointments and duds when it comes to necromancy in a few of the bigger TTRPGs, so take most of what is said in this video as a discussion and a critique on the fantasy of Necromancer, the narrative and world building of it. Remember, I'm not your rules bird. I probably won't be until I start designing my own TTRPGs, or at least start sharing pieces of what I have designed. I digress. Let's take a considerable look at the darkest of magics. When I say necromancy, most of you will think the spookiest, scariest of skeletons, and I can't blame you. I've certainly been a part of a party with a wizard who kept their portable hole full of animated bony boys. But the implications of necromancy are wide, and I feel because of their dark nature, we tend to pull away from them, right? They're the villain magic, aren't they? The use of darkness and the undead, well, what if the umbral magics were normalized? Let's talk about a few more key terms for Magpie's world building. Firstly, one that I used in one of my last videos, the Elf Reimagined, that I didn't define, but we'll come back up today. Archon. That's what the world leaders are called, at least in the main continent that we'll be discussing and creating the rules for the kingdoms and establish the various first Archons to come together in order to end all of the senseless fighting. Where an Archon might deviate from a king, queen, or even an emperor is that, yes, they rule over the policies, but they are also the individuals of great power. They are a certain obstacle that one might have to overcome if you go to war against the kingdom. They aren't a powerful political leader, they are the definition of power in the eyes of many of their followers and subjects. The next term I would like to touch on is similar to Archon, one that will be another element of another video down the line. It's quintessence, and this is your soul force, the power and resources of your non-physical body. Think of this as a pool of energy each person has to be able to achieve great things. This is the general element of someone that is leveling up. This is their life force of most creatures that can grow and achieve supernatural powers of the world. Okay, so 2 quick terms done. Let's move on to the actual discussion, the thesis of necromancy. Well, maybe. I think I'd like to sell you a process, moreover really sell you on the natural experience that necromancy could bring to a world, and without further ado, Creative Writing Magpie, activate. Wouldn't our world be better with fewer problems? Well, how can we manage to truly accomplish any sorts of solutions when we're too preoccupied worrying about staying afloat in the natural troubled times, demon invasions, kingdoms on the brink of war, and we're stuck here worrying about yielding enough crops or having enough gold to take care of what other number of bills? What if I told you the solution was out there? Not just out there, but right under our noses, or better perhaps be said, right under our feet. If you've been troubled by a bit of change in your life, perhaps it's time for you to consider the graveyard should be its own work shift, fit only for the dead to rise and put in some work for the world of the living. With our undead drones, we're ready to serve in those hours that become so unproductive due to our weary bodies needing rest, the breath and bones that the time on this blessed earth has brought us. That doesn't mean productivity has to end, as there are never enough hours in the day in the first place, are there? Truly, there's enough to be done in general, so why not allow us the opportunity to bring some levity by lending a few extra hands and many extra hours to chew away on your projects? With a small investment, you're able to double your profits elsewhere. Start that dream you've always said you'd never have time to, or maybe take your partner on that romantic outing, since work life doesn't have a death grip on you anymore, but instead death's helping hand. Now, I hear your concerns, I certainly do. The dead, they're unsanitary, it's unethical. Yes, we've heard these complaints numerous times, but if we are rogue necromancers with our rusted shovels digging in the yards in order to find our next best underlings, you would be correct. But we're here offering a solution, not another list of problems to add into your life. Our reborn drones aren't made of much like hobbling zombies you might find accosting an adventuring party in an abandoned castle, but instead one of 2 forms. Firstly, our skeletal units are for jobs that require less physical force. The bones drones are cleaned and sealed before the binding spells allow the necromantic revival to take place. Or if you're needing a bit more power in your drones, the muscle requirement, I'd recommend ordering one of our drones that has undergone proper mummification to seal and keep the decayed flesh from wearing and tearing away at your peace of mind. Yes, we are invested in fixing your problems. Now let's address the undead elephant in the room, the ethical concerns. How do we properly source our reborn drones? Well, that's easy. The dead merely come to us. We were able to make contact points with those who are living, mutually agree into a contract, and take ownership of their body after passing. This arrangement allows us to have their bodies rise up and continue working, laboring for their loved ones to earn a stipend of pay for their next of kin, even after their souls have long since passed, and we are here to ensure that too. Our process doesn't tamper with the soul of your loved ones passing on, it merely harvests a combination of our certified necromancer's magic combined with the residual quintessence left in the physical body after passing. With our process, you can find peace of mind knowing that the souls of your loved ones are well at rest as their bodies still work hard, helping you and yours be that much more financially comfortable. However, I know that's not the end of your questions. No, not one bit. Maybe you're interested in what we might even be doing with our drones, and that's a fair question. Well, perhaps think about any job that might be dangerous for the living. Wouldn't it be better to have someone who couldn't experience pain conduct themselves in such a role? Beyond that, look at our numerous growing and prosperous kingdoms. Aren't there always new buildings to be built? Recent repairs that shall take an eternity and a half to get done? Wouldn't it be nicer to fix those jobs, to not destroy the bodies and take lifetimes away from the living, but instead be accomplished in the dark hours by those who have already had the chance to enjoy their health and time in this world? Perhaps construction isn't your only avenue for hard work. Yes, we all know who works the hardest, the masters of agriculture, the farmers who feed and supply the energy to the living. Our farmers who work from sunup to sundown. Don't those hard-working members of society need a few extra hands to attend to their fields, oversee repairs, and attend to their animals? Wouldn't it be much nicer for their families if they weren't killing themselves through exhaustion in order to get those 26 hours of work done in a 14-hour day? Yes, our drones with proper elemental conditioning make excellent farmhands, and if you're in a kingdom that properly sanctions and support our drones, perhaps we can even talk special pricing for our services you offer to the kingdom. However, our magics go beyond that of rebirthing the dead to make them serviceable tools for mutual profit. We can use our necromancy in countless ways. Another that offers aid to our beloved kings of agriculture, for they are too masters of decay in ways that utilize the natural rot and waste of the world as compost. And what if I told you with a touch of necromantic manipulation we could achieve peak performance in your fertilizing compost? Yes, it is by no means our money maker, but we are passionate about ensuring that those that ensure life are empowered by those that can add the experience of the dead back into the mix. I know this may seem strange or excessive, but even those who know not the hard-earned labor of the sun cast down upon their backs for the day still benefit from this, as it helps yield more abundance of food. But I'm sure for some of you, our non-laborers, are curious what's in it for you. I'm sure you're all aware that not every soul of the living spends their time breaking their body, but some break their minds too, and if you've done that, perhaps we can discuss some of those benefits for you. Yes, it is an unfortunate reality that we all must deal with death in some form or fashion. A friend, a father, a spouse. We've all had family members pass away at some point in life, and we are all too aware that the fact that death brings out the worst in the living. When it comes to settling matters of estates, where property goes when the living have passed on, we believe there's no one better to settle those disputes than the one who has left such problems behind in the first place. For if you set up an appointment at one of our offices, or are able to requisition the aid of a certified traveling necromancer, you'd be able to witness them perform the rites of speaking with the dead. This once again doesn't disrupt the soul or the spirit of your loved ones who has recently departed, but allows the chance to settle affairs, and in instances of sudden unforeseen tragedy might allow peace of mind and clarity that we all wanted at some point when losing a loved one. There are many of our necromancers who are certified in any number of matter of law and can be paid paid consultants in addition to the paid ritual of communication with the dead. But this isn't the only time that communing with the dead might be worthwhile to the living, is it? Of course, there are instances where law might request our services, and we stand ready to serve the justice of our kingdoms. We have seen no such dramatic courtroom than when the prosecution calls forth their first witness, the victim of the heinous murder. We have brought justice to countless families and have seen many individuals, heartless killers, be thrown to the world's worst punishments. Justice seen. This could only be done with communing with the dead, and no magic reaches the boundaries of the dead. Divination might see the events or reach out to possibilities of the truth, but we believe necromancy can assure the truth is absolute. With this calling upon the dead, it's not only a tool to use for moments of passing or prosecution of criminals, it could change the very benefits of daily life. Imagine the greatest minds of the world still being able to be called upon in moments of need. Lost knowledge of science, magic, and philosophy being captured and returned to the living, merely a conversation away. It is truly something exceptional that only necromancy can bridge the gap on. The living failure to secure their legacy during their lives. This is, however, a problem that with all of necromancy, isn't it? It is the one school of magic beyond the others, one that requires exceptional genius to be able to indulge and excel at. Any fool with a lick of magic can cast an inferno of destructive energy, and even mischievous use figure out how to temporarily turn invisible, but the upward limits of necromancy is the creation of life and rebirth itself. The creation of our superior undead drones might even exceed what most artisans of the arcane can manage, so what about the impossible? Creating vast armies, creating mass amounts of drones, as we've done. This is what requires the talent that only we can offer. However, even the mass of undead servants isn't quite the most exceptional necromancy to be performed, as I just finished saying, necromancy in its truth is the magic of life. So, what if I said that there was a necromancer who could truly ensure indestructible immortality? No, not the immoral immortals of lichdom, or even the alchemical immortals of vampirism, but true, powerful recreation. The likes that even the gods might grow envious of. Of course, this is the magic of the greatest circle. This is the magic of Asha the Terrible. Now that name is one that truly doesn't gather the magnificence of Asha's magic. Asha has been beyond valuable to the creation of our drones and the education and study of necromancy and how it can be used to fix many problems that the religious fanatics go and name people terrible for understanding and studying seem to forget. Truly, it never made sense. If the gods didn't want us to perform such magic, why would they let us do it? But perhaps you're wondering, what was I rambling on about with Asha and his magic? Asha's capable of reanimating the most powerful ancient souls, not just as competent undead thralls, but instead restoring them to the height of their powers, in bodies created by pure magic that will regenerate and stitch themselves back together, no matter the abuse that the body is put through. They will come back as an indomitable force, and some heretics and kings have said this technique is forbidden, an abomination to the rules of life and nature itself. However, let me ask you, when the demons rise from hell and threaten all existence, or when Taishin reshapes the mountain ranges, bringing great death and destruction across the lands and seas, will you look to Asha and tell him to stand idly by? Tell him in the moment when the dead can once more serve the living in order for the most powerful of warriors to keep the very life and reality continuing. It is in those moments where Asha shall pull upon his special magics and ensure the continuance of reality, like the true guardian that he is. And if you believe that these powers might be abused for political or personal gain, let me assure you that Asha is in many ways a great equalizer. The leader of the Storm Valley Kingdom, the Archon known as Aju, the Great World Order, worked closely with Asha to ensure in bringing the lands outside of their warring period that each kingdom would have a great defense should it be brought to a position of being overwhelmed by destructive evil. The Contract of Continuance was created. 1,000 undead souls to be called upon from the beyond the veil in order to defend the kingdom while under the control of the Archon of the time. Each one of the 4 great lands was given a copy of the contract to ensure that no one land may say they weren't as powerful as the other. However, we all know the ego of the Four Great Lands might never entertain conversation of being weak. With Asha in the corner of the world order, how could you possibly deny that necromancy has its place in the world, working to fix the problems laid before your humble eyes by my humble self? Now, if all of that sounds like the world you wish to live in, a world where problems can become history by those who are history, then merely sign here, and we can begin this journey with a small down payment. And scene. Wasn't that fun? I mean, if you really think about it, there are an abundance of benefits to necromancy, but a great deal of this discussion does ride on a few different conditions. Firstly, let's talk about the religious implications. In general, this is your largest caveat with necromancy, as this is meddling with dead flesh, which might be conditionally disrespectful, or it might be meddling with the deceased soul, which would additionally be quite taboo. This does come down to your own personal world building. Let's take a look at a few different examples we just talked about in a previous video. The Leyland, my moon elves, have a symbiotic bond born with their connection with the spawn of the Diganth World Cutter. And due to this life bond, their culture sees necromancy as incredibly taboo, as the Diganth spawn can't be brought back through necromantic ritual. So if you were to return a powerful warrior of the Moon Elves, expect them to be quite cross, as their often closest partner in the world would no longer be at their side. However, the Shahar, the Sun Elves, see necromancy as a tool. They often will mummify their own bodies to ensure if the rites of solar revival are ever called upon, their bodies are preserved and ready. Beyond that, they have no objections about necromancy in non-Shaharan creation races or everlasting, and often find Sun Souls quite capable of having inclination to re-spark the life of the dead back into their service. Natural car batteries and necromancy being the jumper cables for it. Let's look at the various elements of the sale of necromancy and talk about the good and the bad. First and foremost, the graveyard shift. Yes, for those who chat with me on Blue Sky, you might be aware that this bird is a night shifter by trade. It's interesting to world build as a world hits even a remotely industrialized period that those with wealth wouldn't want whatever they could to grow their capitalistic goals. They will abuse the living to make the most bang they could. Some challenges that could come to this: if you prefer your worlds a bit lower magic, you may not see the need for such a workforce, but even before the assembly lines changed the world of production, we still see the world had housing projects and farms, so I can't say it's completely ruled out. I know a major concern with undead is they're unsanitary by nature, and to that I'd say the practice of embalming the dead to help keep the integrity of their flesh is something ancient Egyptians, all those centuries ago, when the pyramids were still young and they played games of great and terrible power, had some things that could work to their benefit. Along with that, depending on the spell and job assignment, skeletons are right there for use, and you can boil and clean bones before reassembling, which does bring me to my next point. There's nothing saying skeletons can't be mixed and matched. Perhaps create skeletal golems that can be fitted for a specific matchup to a unique kind of job. More hands, more limbs, or if something gets damaged, just stitching together with your spare parts to get the undead drone back up and running. As for jobs aside from the 24-hour production, something that I can think of most people could get behind is the element that there are dangerous jobs that undead might be better suited for. Mines throughout all of human history are a miserable experience. I have my back pains from poor posture at an office job. Most of us wouldn't survive the abuse that a mine would put our bodies through. So why not send the undead in? They don't need to breathe and can contort their bodies in any number of ways to fit in those tight corridors and low ceilings. Beyond that, back to the evil nature of a lot of necromancy, I imagine the predatory conversation that these groups or companies could partake in approaching dying family members and implying that they could serve their families after death, still providing an extra income for just the use of their bodies. It would be sold as quite literally generational wealth in these instances. The fact that companies would certainly form and be predatory for the need for flesh and body in order to grow these necromantic enterprises. There would be the even less savory necromancers who perform illegally the graveyard robbery looking bodies, or the scam artist who preys upon the morning promises to revive those beloved who might just be able to afford whatever price just for the chance to see their loved ones one last time. It is ripe with potential, even if you don't want to put necromancy at the center stage of any economical or social stage, as I plan on doing in portions versions of Regenesis Asius. Even think of some of the problems on a scale that works for you. A Baron makes a dark deal with a Necromancer to ensure he has constant servants working his fields to help increase his immense wealth. This is ripe for a mini-arc within a campaign. Any of the discussed elements are worth side quests or world-building consideration, and that's why Necromancy has to be the start of the conversation over some of the ethics, world-building implications, and boundless opportunities for narrative conflict. Frankly, I think Necromancy falls on the sword the easiest as death magic, and I don't think that's fair. I think if it is death magic, it is also the sort of life in the sense that it controls the umbral forces either withdrawing the death and healing or reviving and inflicting the necromantic energies into the target spell to harm them. It is something that Dale Kingsmill talks about in her video Necromancy for the Good Guys, where she points out the various mythological instances in ancient cultures or religions where good characters or heroes of certain stories use the abilities that are practically necromantic in nature. I know there's a lot of videos out there that discuss back and forth that we could have with Necromancy, but I wanted to play with this very integrated society as something the everyday man or woman might need to debate and gripe about. It really only seemed logical to have folks upset about these different elements, but it also adds an extra level of spice. What if missing people reports become far more apparent, as those who seek to murder would know they'd need to ensure that they've properly destroyed the body to keep state necromancers from being able to bring it back to testify against them. I think it offers an abundance of different elements for different settings to get creative with magic. The sky is really the limit with Necromancy. Actually, the grave and the perpetual balance of life and death might just be the limit here, but the fact is, most will find the sky is the limit a far more understandable expression. As we bring this to a close, there's a few thank yous I want to hand out. Firstly, thank you for watching. I know I'm still up and coming, and that's why, if you've made it this far, you've helped out a lot with each step of getting closer and closer to being able to one day be able to pay an editor and further level up my YouTuber game. Many of these discussions and ideas come from interactions I've had with plenty of my friends over there on Blue Sky, so if you're interested in that kind of stuff, come by and chat. I'm happy to have more people to talk stuff with. Okay, so that should wrap it. I have 25 different ideas at any given time, so it's hard to say what might be next, given the nature of the creative flow. It could be vampires, dungeons, translating characters from fiction into TTRPGs, another review of magic, or truly endless up. So if you have something that interests you that you might like to hear me talk about, please, please, please leave a comment letting me know. And until next time, adventurers, stay safe out there and magpie responsibly. Thanks, and thanks again.